This is my ranking of free games on Steam that I've played, based purely on my personal experience. Each one is placed from masterpiece to trash depending on how fun the gameplay is, how fair it feels without spending money, and how well it keeps you engaged. Let's get straight into the list. Wuthering Waves is an action RPG where an amnesiac hero travels across a post-apocalyptic land, battling dangerous creatures, collecting echoes that strengthen characters, and building a 3-member team with fast swaps, dodges, parries, and special abilities that reward careful timing. After spending many hours with it, I found myself chasing stronger echoes, trying different character combinations, and clearing bosses because the combat stayed exciting. Landing well-timed dodges and counters made every fight rewarding, while wall running and quick traversal made it easy to search every part of the map without slowing down. The story, though, never matched the action. Long conversations, confusing terms, and forgettable characters made me lose interest, and I skipped more dialogue than I expected. Improving my builds and testing new fighters always gave me another reason to jump back in. It easily secures a place in my great tier. Predecessor is a free-to-play multiplayer online battle arena game where 2 teams battle across a single map, pushing through 3 lanes, destroying defensive towers, leveling heroes during each match, and finally breaking the enemy core through teamwork timing and smart ability use. Once I understood the basics, the matches became much more enjoyable. I tried different heroes, learned how each role played, and found that using special abilities at the right moment could completely change a fight. The third-person combat felt satisfying, and I liked seeing my character grow stronger as every match progressed. At the same time, the learning curve was much harder than I expected because the game explained very little, and the constant prompts to buy heroes and skins became annoying. The lack of map variety became noticeable because playing on the same map repeatedly made matches feel less fresh over time. Still, I believe the game deserves a place in my excellent tier. Counter-Strike 2 is a tactical shooter, where 2 teams compete across objective-based maps, buying weapons each round, managing their economy, using grenades to control space, and relying on sharp aim, teamwork, and smart decisions to secure victory before switching sides. After learning the maps and weapon patterns, every match became a test of patience and precision. Landing clean headshots, winning difficult clutch situations, and working with teammates created moments that never got old. I also spent time trying different weapons instead of sticking to the same loadout, and the updated smoke grenades open new ways to attack or defend bomb sites. New players may need outside guides because the game explains very little, but once everything clicks, the skill ceiling feels endless. Winning always felt rewarding because even small mistakes had quick consequences, forcing me to think carefully about decisions I made. This claims a well-deserved place in my masterpiece tier. Lost Ark is an action RPG with MMO elements, where you travel across large regions, battle huge groups of enemies with fast-paced abilities, complete story quests, collect better gear, and choose from several unique classes that each bring a very different combat style. During my playthrough, I found myself trying multiple classes instead of sticking to just one because each played differently. Combat stayed fast, abilities looked fantastic, and character customization gave me plenty of freedom before the adventure even started. I also appreciated that leveling another character became much easier after reaching the level cap once. The story continued to push me ahead, but several side quests became repetitive and made the progression feel slower than it should have. I also expected stronger MMO features, though the game leaned much more toward an action RPG. The variety of activities gave me plenty to do, and experimenting with different builds added more depth, which kept me invested for many hours. This settles into my good tier. The Finals is a free-to-play, team-based shooter where squads compete in a televised game show, racing to secure cash, defend objectives, and outplay rival teams across arenas that can be destroyed almost completely, turning every match into an unpredictable battlefield full of changing strategies. Once I understood how each class worked, I started experimenting with different builds instead of sticking to a single setup, blasting through walls, dropping entire floors beneath enemies, and stealing objectives during the final seconds created some of the most unforgettable matches I have played. Playing with friends made planning attacks and defending cash-out stations much more satisfying, while solo matches still worked well thanks to the simple ping system. I wish there were more game modes and unlocking new equipment took longer than I expected. But the destruction system never stopped creating fresh moments. It confidently claims a place in my excellent tier. Heartopia is a free-to-play life simulation game where you build a home, decorate your space, fish, catch bugs, care for pets, meet villagers, and complete quests, while sharing the town with other players through online multiplayer features inspired by MMO games. With more time spent playing, I realized how flexible the home building system was, and the scooter made moving between different areas of town much easier. Activities like bird watching and pet care also added something different compared to many other cozy games. What stopped me from connecting with it was how the online structure worked. My house changed locations between sessions, different players appeared every time I logged in, and the town never felt like a place I could truly call home. The large number of currencies and constant limited time events also made progression more confusing than it needed to be. It ultimately finds its place in my good tier. Warframe is an online action RPG where powerful biomechanical warriors travel across planets, complete story missions, gather resources, craft equipment, unlock new warframes, and fight through fast cooperative battles using firearms, melee weapons, and unique abilities that can be customized in countless ways. Once I settled into its systems, there was always another objective worth chasing. I experimented with different warframes, tested new weapons, upgraded mods, and slowly built loadouts that matched the way I wanted to play. The movement stood out immediately because sliding, wall running, and bullet jumping made every mission fast and satisfying, instead of feeling repetitive. The freedom to choose what I wanted to do made the experience better, as I could focus on story quests, collect materials, or explore new places depending on my mood. Learning everything took time because the game is packed with mechanics, but that depth made every session rewarding. This easily secures a spot in my excellent tier. Palia is a cozy life simulation game where you build and decorate a home, gather resources, craft furniture, fish, hunt, cook, complete quests, and form relationships with villagers while sharing the world with other players through light multiplayer activities and community events. As I spent more time in it, decorating my house became the biggest reason I returned, because the building system offered much more freedom than I expected. The variety of activities helped keep things fresh because I could take breaks from one task and try something else, while exploring with other players made gathering materials more enjoyable. The friendly community was another highlight, with players often helping each other instead of competing. I wasn't as invested in the main story since it felt unfinished, and some technical issues occasionally interrupted the relaxing pace. The multiplayer features also could have played a bigger role throughout the adventure. It ultimately lands in my good tier. Guild Wars 2 is an online fantasy RPG where players explore massive regions, complete dynamic world events, battle powerful enemies, craft equipment, discover hidden locations, and work alongside other adventurers without needing to form traditional parties for nearly every activity. Before long, I stopped rushing from quest to quest because exploring the map became just as rewarding as completing objectives. I constantly wandered into random events, revived other players during battles, and discovered places I never planned to visit. The variety between weapons made combat more interesting because each one changed my skills and encouraged me to try new ways of fighting. The world always felt active because players naturally helped each other without competing over rewards, which made every session much more welcoming than I expected. Performance dipped in a few busy areas, and falling from high places became an annoying habit, but neither stopped me from exploring further. It deserves a place in my excellent tier. Once Human is an open-world survival crafting game where an alien invasion has twisted people, animals, and everyday objects into bizarre monsters. Players gather resources, build a base, craft equipment, capture helpful deviations, explore dangerous regions, and battle strange creatures while uncovering the secrets behind the apocalypse. The creative enemy designs were one of the strongest parts for me because I was always surprised by what appeared during my journey. I spent plenty of time upgrading my base, unlocking better crafting options, and collecting useful deviations that helped during combat or managed tasks around my home. Riding across the huge map on a motorcycle made exploring much faster, and there was always another abandoned town or research facility worth checking out. The combat itself stayed fairly simple, and some quests started feeling repetitive after a while, especially later in the adventure. The game became significantly harder in the later stages, with the difficulty rising beyond what I was prepared for. It still comfortably earns a place in my great tier. FragPunk is a tactical multiplayer shooter where two teams battle across objective-based maps using unique lancers, powerful abilities, traditional firearms, and a creative shard card system that changes the rules every round with unexpected modifiers, keeping every match different from the last. The shard cards quickly became my favorite part, because I never knew what kind of chaos would happen next. The changing round conditions made every match interesting, as one round could reward fast movement while another could completely change the combat approach. Testing different lancers made the gameplay more interesting because their abilities pushed me to use different strategies and adapt my approach during fights. The fast pace meant every mistake was punished, and the final duel rounds created plenty of tense moments where one good play could decide everything. Unlocking new characters and cosmetics felt slower than I wanted, and the huge number of currencies became harder to follow over time. This game is going in my good tier. Marvel Rivals is a team-based hero shooter where iconic Marvel heroes and villains battle across objective-focused maps using unique abilities, destructive environments, powerful team-up skills, and varied roles that reward coordination, smart positioning, and adapting to different team compositions throughout every match. During my playthrough, I tried different characters because their unique playstyles gave me new ways to play and made each one feel different from the others. Learning how certain heroes work together made every match more strategic, and watching entire fights change because of a well-timed ultimate never got old. Matches stayed interesting because the environments could change, creating new opportunities and making me adapt rather than repeating the same moves. Battle Pass progression could have been handled much better, and I wish there were more support heroes to choose from. But the gameplay itself stayed exciting every time I queued up. This proudly takes its place in my excellent tier, Where Winds Meet is an open-world action RPG inspired by wuxia stories, where wandering martial artists master different weapons, learn mystical techniques, complete story quests, uncover side adventures, and battle dangerous enemies across ancient China using parries, dodges, and stylish martial arts abilities. While playing, I enjoyed experimenting with different weapons because each combination changed my combat approach and made me adapt my strategy depending on the situation. Learning special techniques outside of battles was another highlight, and discovering unusual activities while exploring made wandering across the world rewarding. The combat felt satisfying once I understood how abilities chained together, especially during larger fights where timing mattered more than rushing in. Managing equipment and upgrade systems became much more complicated than I wanted, and progression slowed down noticeably later in the adventure. The world itself, though, always tempted me to see what was waiting over the next hill or inside another hidden location. That comfortably fits into my great tier. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is a digital card game where players build custom decks, collect thousands of cards, master different summoning mechanics, and battle opponents in ranked or casual matches using strategy, careful planning, and powerful card combinations instead of quick reactions. The return experience showed me how much the game had improved over time, and I spent many matches experimenting with decks, learning mechanics, and refining my strategies after every duel. Winning through smart plays felt incredibly satisfying, especially when everything came together after several turns of planning. The presentation also deserves credit because the animations and battlefield effects made every powerful summon feel exciting. The biggest obstacle was the learning curve, as the huge number of mechanics and lengthy card descriptions made getting back into the game much harder than I expected. Once everything started making sense again, it became difficult to stop queuing for another match. It confidently earns its place in my excellent tier. Brawlhalla is a platform fighting game where colorful legends battle across floating arenas using different weapons, gadgets, aerial attacks, and special moves, with the goal of knocking opponents off the stage instead of draining a traditional health bar. It took me a few matches to understand each character because their weapons and movesets felt very different from one another. Once I found a legend that suited my style, matches became much more exciting, especially during close fights, where a single strong hit could completely change the outcome. Jumping into online matches was smooth, and I never had trouble finding fast-paced battles against other players. I did wish there were more gadgets and larger stages because some matches started feeling too familiar after a while. Still, the simple controls and satisfying combat made it easy to jump back in whenever I wanted another quick match. This finds its place in my good tier. Apex Legends is a battle royale shooter where squads of 3 choose unique legends with special abilities, search for weapons and equipment, survive a shrinking battlefield, and rely on teamwork, movement, and smart positioning to become the last team standing. I quickly realized this wasn't just about aiming well, because working together mattered just as much as winning gunfights. The ping system made communicating with random teammates incredibly easy, and reviving fallen squad members created tense moments that completely changed matches. Learning different legends became one of the more enjoyable parts because every ability offered a different way to handle battles, whether I wanted to deal damage, defend, or help my teammates. Sliding across the map and chaining movement together made every fight feel fast without sacrificing strategy. Luck still played a role whenever early loot wasn't on my side. And teammates didn't always cooperate, but those moments never overshadowed everything the game did right. It unquestionably claims a place in my masterpiece tier. Star Wars: The Old Republic is an online RPG where players choose different classes, shape their own stories through dialogue choices, recruit companions, explore iconic planets, complete quests, and battle across the conflict between the Republic and the Sith using unique abilities and class-based combat. I quickly realized the story was the biggest reason to stay because every class offered its own adventure instead of repeating the same campaign. The dialogue choices also made conversations more interesting, and several companions grew into characters I actually connected with instead of feeling like simple party members. Exploring familiar Star Wars locations made every new planet exciting, while grouping with other players during tougher missions added another layer to the experience. Combat eventually settled into a familiar MMO rhythm, and some side objectives became repetitive after long sessions. The strong storytelling and memorable atmosphere always encouraged me to continue discovering what came next. It comfortably finds its place in my great tier. Arena Breakout Infinite revolves around tense extraction raids where valuable equipment, hostile enemies, and limited escape opportunities turn every mission into a careful balance of risk and reward. Players search dangerous locations, gather loot, battle AI enemies and rival squads, then fight their way to extraction before losing everything they collected. I quickly understood why the genre has such a loyal fan base because every raid carried real risk, making simple firefights far more intense. Building loadouts was straightforward, jumping into matches was quick, and I appreciated not having to deal with unnecessary systems before getting back into the action. The gunplay felt solid. The maps encouraged careful movement, and extracting with a backpack full of valuable gear always felt rewarding. The game found a good balance between being accessible and keeping the deeper mechanics that make extraction shooters satisfying. The similarities to other games in the genre were impossible to ignore, but the smoother experience made it much easier to recommend. It deserves a place in my great tier. The First Descendant combines fast third-person shooting with looter RPG mechanics, sending players across large battlefields to complete missions, defeat massive bosses, collect powerful weapons, unlock new descendants with unique abilities, and strengthen their builds through constant upgrades and equipment. Trying different descendants became the biggest reason I stayed because each one completely changed how combat played. Swapping between abilities, testing new weapons, and taking down giant Colossus bosses created the most exciting moments of my playtime. The gunplay felt responsive, movement stayed smooth, and there was always another piece of gear worth chasing after every mission. The campaign, however, relied too heavily on repetitive objectives, and the story rarely held my attention. Unlocking new characters also demanded far more grinding than I expected, making progression slower than it needed to be. The action carried the experience much further than everything around it. I'm placing this in my good tier. NARAKA BLADEPOINT transforms the Battle Royale formula into a fast-paced martial arts showdown where warriors rely on swords, spears, hero abilities, and grappling hooks instead of traditional firearms, rewarding precise timing, mobility, and close-range duels over long-range shooting. Learning the combat took much longer than I expected because timing parries and counterattacks mattered far more than simply attacking first. Once everything started clicking, every duel became incredibly satisfying, especially when I outplayed someone with well-timed dodges and combos. Flying across rooftops with the grappling hook made exploring the map just as enjoyable as fighting, and trying different heroes kept matches feeling fresh. The early bot matches didn't offer much challenge, and occasional connection issues interrupted a few close battles. I still felt victories rewarding due to the unique combat system, which is different from other Battle Royale games. It ultimately lands in my good tier. Throne and Liberty builds its adventure around a vast fantasy realm where players switch combat styles by changing weapons, complete story quests, join large-scale battles, explore dangerous regions, tackle dungeons, and grow stronger through deep progression systems instead of fixed character classes. Experimenting with different weapon combinations was easily my favorite part because I wasn't locked into a single playstyle. The variety of builds made combat more enjoyable because I could adjust my playstyle whenever I wanted. Joining massive events with a large number of players also created unforgettable moments, while the smooth early progression helped me reach stronger challenges without excessive leveling. Once I reached the endgame though, the grind for better gear became much heavier, and managing builds took more planning than I expected. The huge amount of activities always gave me something new to work toward, but the progression could sometimes feel overwhelming. It ultimately finds its place in my good tier. Path of Exile offers a deep action RPG adventure where players battle through dark fantasy regions, collect endless loot, customize powerful builds with an enormous passive skill tree, combine skill gems for unique abilities, and continue growing stronger through a massive endgame filled with challenging content. During my playthrough, I spent a lot of time experimenting with different builds because the freedom to create unique characters was unlike almost anything else I had played. Discovering clever skill combinations and watching a build finally come together was incredibly satisfying after hours of planning. The campaign introduced memorable bosses and interesting locations that kept me moving forward, while the endgame always had another challenge waiting. Combat could become repetitive at times, and learning the many systems required much more patience than I expected, especially when trying to optimize my character. The freedom to customize and the amount of depth available made the game feel fresh every time I returned. This easily secures a place in my excellent tier. That's my ranking of the free games available on Steam. Let me know how your rankings compare, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.